Great. Okay, hi everybody. You're very welcome to the closing conversation of Transmediale. I'm going to begin with a probably as quick as possible sort of an introduction to our panelists, many of whom will already be familiar with you to you because they've participated in various different conversations throughout the last few days. And maybe I'll just sort of work my way around. Beginning with Jussi Parikka. So Jussi, who's an OG transmediale, but not a girl, sadly. Jussi Parikka is not a girl online. Anyway, Jussi Parikka is a professor in digital aesthetics and culture at Aarhus University in Denmark, but he's also visiting professor of art at Winchester School of Art, University of Southampton. And at FAMU at the Academy of Performing Arts in Prague, where he led the project Operational Images and Visual Culture. And his books include Insect Media, which was published in 2010, Digital Contagions, and A Geology of Media, Slow Contemporary Violence, and then more recently, I suppose, the Operational Images, which was published in 2023, and which I think is available as well to buy at Transmediale this year. And his books have been translated into numerous languages, including Japanese, Korean, Chinese, Czech, Italian, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. Then next to Jussi, we have Svitlana. Sorry, and I didn't ask you how to pronounce your surname, so I'm probably going to butcher it here, but Matviyenko, okay, who is an associate professor of critical media analysis in the School of Communication and associate director of the Digital Democracies Institute. Her research and teaching, which is informed by science and technology studies and histories of science, are focused on information and cyber war, media and environment, critical infrastructure studies, and post-colonial theory. Next to Svitlana, then we have the director of Transmediale, Nóra Murchú, who's a curator and researcher. Her curatorial work explores online culture and the implications of technological developments, and her multidisciplinary practices embraces narratives and fictions, resulting in objects, exhibitions, and interventions. Her research aims to help people understand how complex socio-technical systems are imagined, built, and used. She currently serves as a lecturer in the Department of Computer Science and Information Systems at the University of Limerick in Ireland and is the artistic director of Transmediale in Berlin at present. And next to Nóra, then we have Dubravka, and I will actually have to ask you to help me probably with your surname. I'm so sorry. Sekulić. Sekulić. Did I say it right? Okay, sorry. I'm so sorry. So Dubravka Sekulić is an architect, theorist, and educator. Her research explores transformations of contemporary cities at the nexus between the production of space, laws, and economy. She's a researcher for the project Curatorial Design, A Place Between, and as a co-editor of the relational digital publication Total Reconstruction. And she's also the author of several books, including Glotz nicht so romantisch on extra-legal space in Belgrade. And most recently, she collaborated with artist and filmmaker Anna Husman on Don't Trace, Draw, a film that explored the spatial legacy of the Yugoslav pedagogical reform. Next to the Ravka, then we have Sasha. Sasha Anikina, an artist and media theorist whose work focuses on effective infrastructures, algorithmic imaginaries, feminist SDS, and technological conditions of knowledge production, governance, labour, and effect. She is senior lecturer in media practices at Winchester School of Art and co-director of Critical Infrastructures and Image Politics Research Group. Next to Svitlana, then we have Helen Starr, who's an Afro-Carib Trinidadian world-building commissioner. You may have seen, I think, was speaking on the panel just before this. Her innovative practice establishes a Carib epistemology for digital art, focusing on immersive media and AI technologies that express indigenous concepts such as gender fluidity, skin thinking, simultaneous multiple realities, and nature-guided worlds. And Helen is on the board of, is it Quad, Helen, or is it QUAD? Okay. Okay, sorry, so this bio is maybe slightly out of date. Okay. Okay, and she's on the board of PhotoWorks. Then we have Nelly Pinkrah, is that correct? Is a media and cultural studies scholar and writer, currently a research assistant at the Technical University of Dresden. Her areas of interest, which she speaks and writes on, include Black studies, history of media and technology, poetics and politics, and critical pedagogy. I'm Rachel O'Dwyer. I'm going to be moderating this session. I'm the author of Tokens, which was published this year by Verso. And next to me is Alex Quicho, who's the author of Small Gods, which was published by Zero Books in 2021, a book on the terror and transcendence of drone technology. But Alex also writes a lot about the girl online, including for The White Review, New Inquiry, Wired, Vogue, Book Forum, and others. And she's an associate lecturer in speculative futures at Central St. Martin's. I think that is the longest bio introduction I've ever done. Thank you for staying with me for this. So this, I think, has been a kind of a, it's a difficult closing conversation to sort of plan for, and difficult maybe because we're all in this sort of space of, what exactly is it that we want to say, and we some of us met anyway, for breakfast. Anyone kind of was available, met for breakfast this morning. And we decided that maybe the most sort of honest way of speaking to this was to sort of begin by answering or asking each other this question, like, why are you here? Like, why have we come to transmediale? Why did we decide to speak at transmediale? What is our reasoning, or what are our thinking for that? Does that sound okay to everybody? And I think, I know we have a big panel here, but I actually think it's maybe important that everybody who wants to kind of speak to that gets a chance to do so. Will I start with yourself, Alex, maybe? Is that okay? Sure. Yeah?
Yeah, thank you for asking. It is in some ways a tricky question, but in some not at all. I think the central question that we have to use some proxies to discuss today was never a question in the Global South, in third world allegiances. I also firmly believe that Western discourse is at a certain dead end in terms of its abstraction and its unusable politics in the way that this festival has put forward as subject matter. So I thought it was quite important for us to be here and engage with what that actually materializes at and what other strategies, tactics, messiness, and realism we can engage in together as a result. So that's why I'm here.
I just realized now I'm going second. One of the things we talked about this morning, I suppose, was this question of fragmentation on the left. And I started thinking about, for me, a conversation I suppose I was having with my husband right before I came to transmediale. And maybe instead of explaining kind of why I came, I decided I'd try and kind of reproduce the conversation. So this is Tuesday, 31st of January, 2024, Phibsworth, Dublin. My husband sits across from me drinking a beer and scrolling on his phone. I made rice if you want some, he says. Thanks. Are you all set for Germany? Our son Ted interjects, will you bring me back some Pokemon cards with the German writing on? Obsidian flames? I mean, not at all. Teaching has been so intense. Honestly, I haven't had a chance to even look at the schedule properly. He says, I've just opened Instagram to another statement from an Irish artist pulling out. I mean, sorry, I know there's a lot going on right now, but how do you feel about this? Well, obviously a lot's changed in the past week, but I trust Nóra completely on this. Along with yourself, she's the other person in my life who's deeply engaged with the Palestinian struggle, to the point where we've talked about little else since October 7th. So when Strike Germany emerged, she sent it to me, and I asked her, if we should withdraw. Okay, and what did she say? Hang on. I pull out my phone and begin searching through my old messages, feeling his eyes on me. Do you think we should strike? Basically, I asked her what would be more effective, like the statement that comes from withdrawing or to stay and be part of the conversation. Like, why foreclose the conversation before it started? My husband says nothing, but looks at me over the top of his rice bowl. To anyone not married to him for 12 years, he might just look like he is chewing. To his wife, the expression says a multitude, a kind of moral unimpeachability, a sense that he regards this conversation as a teachable moment. I understand what you're saying, he says. I do. If you withdraw, you are silencing yourself, and that's one less person in the conversation, yada, 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 yada. I'm coming at this as someone who has been involved for several years, and transmediale has done so much work to actually platform voices who write. So just think what a powerful statement would be if the organisers decided to come out and cancel the entire festival. People know transmediale, it means something. Just cancel it. I mean, what would that say? But that's the problem. Would it say anything? Well, I just know that a lot of politically engaged artists that you and I respect, Sam Kyo, for example, but who restrict Germany? Is Patrick Beresnahan working and struggling from within a cultural institution in Germany? Is Sam Kyo from London? Or is it content on his phone? I mean, have you posted anything about it on your feed yet, Rachel? I was wondering if you were going to say anything. Not yet, I say. I mean, I've seen that members of my panels have made statements about it already. He pauses. If anyone makes a big statement on their social media that they're going because they want to be part of the conversation, well, I'm sorry, Rachel, but that's just bullshit. You haven't really thought about it enough. You look freaked out. I'm not trying to freak you out. I'm just saying that sometimes politics means making sacrifices, like not doing transmediale. Honestly, Paddy, she's so burned out by all the bullshit, I think she'd love to cancel. Okay. Look, we both know I'm not as informed as you, and I won't pretend that I am. But even what you said there about our friends in London, it's like, what does that have to do with anything? What Sam Kyo thinks of my Instagram stories? I made a choice a month ago to stay in the festival. I talked about it then with Nóra, and again with the organisers. I trust her completely. If I pulled out now, it wouldn't be because of the genocide in Palestine or McCarthy-esque German censorship. I would not be thinking about how my actions made a difference to these things. I'd just be thinking about how my actions made me look to others. Fine. I just know that if I were an artist and if I had been invited, I would not go.
So I work a lot with cool, hip, black and brown London artists. Needless to say, I was hounded, even though I'm deliberately not on Instagram or social media, but they have my WhatsApp. And to be honest with you, I was levitating with rage that anyone would try and police my politics. I'm here because I just think all of these people are so privileged. A big part of my work is about archiving. And to give you an example, it was only in 2018 that they who have the power to name things named the genocide of my people in 2018. And it was not because of all the stories we told, it was not because of all the dead skeletons in the ground, it was because there was scientific proof. They found something in the Arctic ice called the Orbis spike. And in the finding of that, the geologists began to wonder, what is this strange spike in the ice? And in doing their research, they discovered that there had been another climate change, that in 100 years, 60 million of my people were killed. The impact of that caused the entire climate of the world to change, because with all the deaths, plants grew, and the plants sucked the CO2 out of the atmosphere. And that's what led to the Great Ice Age, which also led to the killing of the witches and the expulsion of the Jewish people. Speaking of entanglements. But that was only acknowledged in 2018 as fact. And not only that, it's not called the Amerindian genocide. They called it the great dying of the people, the indigenous people of the Americas. The other creature that's named like this, the great dying of, are the dinosaurs. So even when the facts had finally proven to them that 60 million of us died, they still couldn't give us the courtesy of naming it what it was, a genocide. So I am here because I want my conversations to be archived. I know what it's like to be erased from the archive. I know what it's like to not even have the privilege of people acknowledging not just your physical genocide, but your cultural genocide. And I guess that's why I'm here. And furthermore, I will say, I'm so furious that there were withdrawals that left empty space, because there are lots of people who I know who would have been so privileged to talk about issues in the country which no one in the global north even knows about. And that opportunity, that silencing of the voice of the other, for me, was just a terrible thing to do. So I'm calling it privilege.
Hi. So I was actually asked this same question, I think, 2 days ago before coming to Berlin in the context of Strike Germany and in the context of this tactic of withdrawal. And I think for me the answer has been kind of straightforward, and owing to my experience of being a person who is a Russian passport holder, and I only have that kind of passport, so no other one. So for me, my answer was dictated by this experience that I have seen for myself and for many other people, that situations of blanket ban have not been extremely productive, because they mainly resulted in cutting off channels of communication, of resources, of mutual aid to the anti-war resistance groups and initiatives inside Russia. And I know from experience that on the other side of this blanket withdrawal, if you accelerate it to a particular location, the experience of that location, there's nothing particularly magical or exciting waiting for you. It's just empty places and occupied by public places of speech occupied by state narratives or this imperialist noise. So while, of course, on some level, my reaction to discussions of the freedom of speech in Germany will, to some degree, look like this famous meme appropriating the content topic of the festival, the one where a bloodied actor in the crown of thorns is listening to Mel Gibson, who's explaining to him something very intently, and he's very healthy looking, right? And I just think that in the end, it's just more important in practical terms to engage, and it's more important to use the resources, because the resources in the end are what is going to change, or what is going to produce the material change, the sustaining the non-state infrastructures and the care work and all of the invisible labor that goes into it is in the end going to be more important. And this is what is, in my experience, making some difference now. Yeah, people will argue that maybe it's not enough, but it's also because they don't see it, because it's a very invisible discourse. And I also field various questions, like, so what is happening there now? And yeah, we could start on this, but the question is more about why is it not known in the first place?
This summer I started digging into something, partly which is also digging where I stand, to a certain degree, that I have been circling around for years, and that's working on Bosnian genocide and Serbian violence in Bosnia. Especially in the early years of the Bosnian War in 1992 in the area around Prijedor, which is a site where ethnic cleansing was developed as a terminology of Serbian side who wanted to make that territory only Serbian. But that happened in the 92 is not Srebrenica, which is recognized as genocide. What happened in Prijedor, and is to a certain degree still happening because there are other forms of violence that are ongoing after war was suspended by something that's called peace agreement, but that's liberal peace. So I started doing this work. Anyone who ever asked me where do you come from realizes that I often have this really long, complicated answer in explaining that I'm Yugoslav. But I do have a Serbian passport. And that makes a really big difference. How do I do this work that I'm not doing the work about, but I'm doing it with those who are resisting to be just defined through the view of the perpetrator? So I feel always that this is my floor to scrub, even though I feel that ever since Yugoslavia fell apart, I have a Serbian passport, but there is also a limit to which I'm part of that state sees me as a fully integrated subject. So this work was briefly exhibited in Berlin earlier couple of months ago. And in October, we realized that the only thing to do is to withdraw that exhibition because the institution where it was exhibited, it was clearly not possible to have that conversation. So what does it mean to have a conversation about Omarska camp, which is one of these places in Prijedor, in an institution that denies the right to talk about other camps that are happening? That was a really easy decision. You withdraw because there is no space to have a conversation. I came here because I realized a lot is being done to carve the space to have a conversation, to find vocabulary to talk about things, to bring our situated conjunctural analysis, sorry, academic in the room, to maybe become we, at least temporarily, to find language, to find analysis that can bring about co-liberation. Because my liberation is also connected to the liberation of the whole world. And I cannot also strike that possibility to have that conversation.
I work here. At the moment, maybe barely. This festival in particular has been really challenging in a really very different way. I don't think I've worked on the program actually for about 3 months now because of dealing with so many things that have been around us. Constant questioning, constant pressures, constant clarification about who we are, where we stand. This is all okay. It's really okay to ask these questions. In a broader, German context, it's been kind of I don't know, I just feel very fucking naive, to be honest. What's happened here in the last, since October has been really just eye-opening in so many different ways. In people who I thought were left, not left. People who I thought might share a type of solidarity, no. and the constant fear that has grown and strengthened and grown and strengthened and crushed us as an institution. And yesterday we really broke. We broke to external pressure. And unfortunately, one of the panels was the victim of this pressure. And this was after months and months and months of just anxiety and stress and pressure. But I wanted to show up here today because I think it's important. I think it's important to be present now because I want to stand by the things that I put into action. We came up with this theme in April 2022 because it's a part of this 5-year inquiry that I have into the ways in which media technology, media practices are currently defined and have created a kind of a type of knowledge. And for me, coming into this position has been very much about making something else. Taking some of my experiences, my personal history, Ireland, Irish history, my family history, reflecting on these things, trying to bring a type of collectivity that I find in Ireland and much less here, to be honest. To try and bring this type of friendship, and because I hate saying the word solidarity, because what the fuck does that mean? But yeah, I don't know. I tried, basically. But this theme in particular, the unusable politics, I refused to define it for a really, really long time on purpose, and I still won't define it on purpose. But for me, it's been a thing that I've witnessed across all sides of political spectrums. It's not something that is because I think that when we talked to people originally about it, they were like, oh yeah, the right does do that. And I was like, not just the right. Come on. And it was a reflection on kind of seeing how so much of kind of the types of collective politics that we talk about and we theorize about are actually fundamentally fractured and not actually in existence. And so that for me is a huge part of what I've been trying to question and do with my team in the last few months. To look at kind of how we are so deeply embedded within platforms, infrastructures, and systems that we have allowed their logic and their structure to define who we are. And not only that, we've been happy to perform them. And I wanted to look at the ways in which we have been transformed and created a set of actions that are unusable to actually developing material politics. So rather, we're more concerned with the image of politics than actual political making. And I think, yeah, I guess that's why I'm here. And also I work here.
So, answering the question why I'm here, I guess I will begin from that heavy question of genocide and will end with something close to what Nóra was saying. And of course, genocide is one of these most horrible events. But the discourse perception or misconception or misperception or knowing or not knowing or whether there's this or that seems to be sometimes even more horrible and heavy and terrifying than this horrid event at the core of it. Over these 2 years, watching and thinking about what is happening in Ukraine, I clearly understand the problem that is caused by the split, the division between political and legal understanding of genocide or crimes against humanities. So there are certain signs that might be helpful for us to recognize something as one or another, for instance. But then, again, there is a myriad of people who would tell you, is it really that? Until it is recognized as such by the international court. And how long does it take for it to be recognized by the international court? Will Ukraine still be there when we prove that Bucha was a genocide and cities like Bucha and stuff like that? And this is a horror. The International Criminal Court is one of the infrastructures, the theories and ideologies that we live by or think by is the other infrastructure. So suddenly we see that they are also not fast. And the perception of the left of the Ukrainian events is despicable and disgusting. And speaking for us, and I am a left thinker, and speaking for me what is needed for me, or how I should be, or what is peace should be for me, it's unacceptable. No speak about me without me, and this is kind of the logo that we all shared. And suddenly the betrayal comes precisely from the community who kind of embodied it for me for so many years. So I also see again what this unbelievable slowness and fear. How did it happen that we are so penetrated by this fear and so rely on these infrastructures that are so slow? So I am here because this is the infrastructure of trust for me. This is a possibility for these encounters. And it cost a lot. Some of you know, some of you don't. But what is put and what is at risk and what is paid already now through this month is fucking unbelievable. Will it exist with this little infrastructure of trust where we can talk about genocides and looking for the parallels and the science that won't betray us, that we can rely on and know this is it, but this is genocide, this is war, this is violence, and we have to solidarize around it. So I guess this is why not I'm here, but all of us are here. This is our infrastructure. So let's work somehow. Let's help to keep it together.
Yeah, to try to respond to the question of why I'm here, I think we already heard so many great positions, and it's just difficult to add anything meaningful to that because it's so many good points are raised. In a similar tone, I feel invested in transmediale, and that in those terms that was mentioned by Svitlana and Nóra and others as well. Across the years, invested across the years in the sense that it has been for a long time. If we also kind of it's not only a media art or critical tech discourse, conference, festival, and so forth. But among that field, transmediale has been the one where actually these questions come out and are explicated in really fruitful, progressive ways. And I feel that being part of that is already meaningful, and being able to contribute that is already meaningful. And what Nóra said as well exactly is that these are long-term projects. We don't read, festivals are short, they're a couple of days, they're quite explosive in multiple kinds of ways, some more unfortunate, some more fortunate. And much of festivals is exactly what doesn't happen at festivals. It happens 1 year ahead when planning starts, 2 years ahead when planning starts. You try to project, you try to think of particular themes. Sometimes they become a bit too real in relation to what then happens in the last 3 months of a festival, and trying to respond on your feet. So the labor that goes into it is just massive from the whole team, and hence being part of supporting that is, I feel, crucial for reasons of trust, for instance. And there's many other themes that are really meaningful to me, for instance, when listening and coming to learn in this context. It's about the multitude of scales or the registers of address, the registers in which we find critical languages, where theory becomes really interesting in multitude of infrastructural projects, social projects, and whatnot, and how the notion of the project becomes, again, alive. The idea that the project is not just that you present a project, you present a project in the future sense, that you're presenting possibilities for a particular kinds of futures, hopefully, as well. This sounds slightly grandiose, but I think many of us who are part of these projects know exactly what I mean, that it is about a particular ways in which not just recognizing the communities that come together and recognizing their resonance across different conflicts across years and the ways in which they resonate, and we might find solidarity indeed, but also in terms of like trying to think through exactly of how, okay, let's say we screw up, how do we do it better? What do we do next? How do we do it together? And in those terms as well. This is just a brief note. I'm sure that we can follow up on many other points and prompts that we have.
I mean, thank you so much, all of you, that you went before me. And you know what, first of all, thank you to Nóra and the team that you held this space for us. Like, I wanna, like, I'm sorry if I preempted because maybe you wanted to say this, and I'm sorry if I like took it from you, but I'm here because of all of you, like, honestly. And I skipped my answer because it's somehow an impossible question, I feel like, because, you know, there's a direct answer to this question in relation to, you know, how one positions oneself to particular political actions such as striking, and such as the people who call for strikes, such as like how, you know, different kind of groups operate, how your relation to them is, so on and so forth. So I have a particular relationship to, you know, maybe people that have called for this strike or not. But then also I have a very particular standing towards this particular space, this particular person, this particular history of this institution, which is honestly not, it's not, you know, an institution that is standing, materialized, whatever. It becomes something every year through the work of a lot of people who get hired, who are very precarious sometimes, and so on and so forth. So I have a particular relationship to that. I can talk about it, but, you know, I'm here. I'm here because of you. It's really an impossible question, I don't know. And it's also impossible time. And I'm quite emotional because of our panel before, actually, and also because, you know, you were also asking about the fragmentation of the left and so on and so forth. You know, I have a most wonderful colleague, I'm not sure if they're still here, Michelle, who reminded me of of this quote by, Miriam Kaba, who said, "Hope is a discipline." You know, I lost a bit of it. I will get back, but everyone I know is so freaking exhausted. I'm German. I'm also here because I'm German. I have a particular responsibility that I take seriously. I'm sorry. I'm quite emotional. Like, we have to, like. Sorry. We really have to find each other. We have weak movements. Like, there's a lot of work to do. Thank God. Sorry. Thank you. Sorry. The last thing I want to say, it fits to the whole emotional, outburst. I'm quite angry, actually, that that we are at this, like, that this is the point we're at. Like, other people have said this and spoken about this, but there are a lot of people, and now I'm really talking about, a very particular situation that we're in Germany at the moment, but a lot of people have been saying this and have been, the bearers of a lot of the violence that is there and has always been there. Yes, and we need to be more. Like, we're exhausted. Sorry.
I don't know. I wanted to thank you all, like, for your honesty and just the level of. I mean, I think there's a lot of emotional labor as well going on. And I just feel like you articulated so much of this way better than I ever could. Particularly, I think this thing of, which I actually kind of felt weirdly guilty about, but it's actually really important, which is to understand, as you say, your own, like, your allegiance as well to, like, particular, like, emotional networks of trust and how like important those are. And I like that. I trust Nóra implicitly, and I trust this space, But I do think something really interesting maybe that came up this morning as well. And it was so annoying. I missed your guys' panel because our launch was at the same time, which is a pain. But I think I got it. We were sort of discussing how maybe there is a danger in the conversation even that we're having today, that we're almost slightly centering Germany too much in our conversation. And can we look at some of these questions maybe through a decolonial lens, and can we kind of can we bring maybe sort of other perspectives, and maybe also other kinds of forms of I don't know whether we want to call them tactics or strategies or forms of compromise. But yeah, for me, even just when we were talking in a very sort of casual way over breakfast this morning, that was something I really wanted to draw out in the panel. And I don't know if anybody wants to go, maybe Alex or... Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at Alex because I think...
Sorry, I should have sat in front of you. But no, it's okay. I think I'll address that point in particular because of the necessary distance that some of us have here, because Transmediale is by nature quite an international festival, and it has that challenge, of course, of working within state constraints, but of course also bringing in people with a multitude of backgrounds and situated knowledges that address their positioning within what is essentially incomprehensible violence. And I kind of wanted us to think about that, because I think one thing we were speaking about a lot today was the failure of directness. I think Helen addressed it in her statement as well, the failure of evidence. When all the facts assembled and spoken clearly and articulated in the language of the people who name things, to quote Helen, when things are articulated in the language that already exists, that is supposed to give people the agency or the category of human, for example, in a court or in an international relation, if these things fail to articulate anything basically useful to people who are exposed to the most base condition of this violence, then what is actually left? I think that things like the institution, the academy, have been exposed and have failed for many reasons. I think that failure is important to address as well, because that failure is not something, I think it's important to hold space for friendship. I think that as we do that and develop trust and care for each other, which is very, very, very important, we also have to address the ways that these things have broken, as we've seen, and that we, like I kind of articulated earlier, I'm sorry, this is very depressing, but I think it's very important for our closing conversation and for the, theme and the, I guess, historical position when years pass from now, of what this gathering has even meant to do. And I think that Nóra's point about the unusability of what is happening here, that's not just a point of discourse and the failure of language in terms of communicating with each other, but this failure that extends to the extension of human rights, access of aid, the responsibility that the imperial core, we know it has no responsibility to the elsewheres. And the reason why I brought up proxies is that if certain phrases, for example, are activated and unable to be used because of certain direct consequences that are reified in a certain system, then the failure of directness doesn't mean a failure of your action, of your solidarity. Sometimes it means, and I'm quoting the editor of a lifestyle magazine that was the main purveyor of anti-dictatorship criticism in the Philippines, and I'm translating very loosely, but he said, sometimes if you can't say it direct, you have to say it sideways. And this is under a regime that openly killed journalists and academics and left their bodies in the street. I'm not saying this to shock you, but I'm saying that the sideways became an important strategy for survival and circulation. So I think the ways that we've gathered here today has been very important because of not only the directness and the action people have taken here, but also the proxies we've had to find in order for this conversation and what might happen next to continue as the structure that surrounds it intensifies, so to speak. So I think that maybe addresses your prompt a little bit.
Thank you. I don't know, Helen, if you had anything to add. I'm putting you on the spot here. I don't know if you had anything to add, Helen.
I can briefly say something,
Yes,
but then I'll happily pass it on. Just picking up on that as well, and this is a pretty obvious point I'm going to say, but perhaps they need to be said as well, but already in that direction as well. The ways in which we don't end up in being in a constant reaction only, to enter a discourse that is already been made up, the terms that have been made up, that the rhetoric has been made up, the forums that have been made up, then we are fucked. That's the sort of a thing that we can't end up, and that's why it's really interesting again to look at long-term projects that have been building, whether it's infrastructures, social bonds, different forms of futurity and such things. And that's why it's sort of these months, for instance, are so tricky, because many of the terms that we have to engage with are set, and we feel uncomfortable because we feel that this is stupid, this is not the things that should be talked about, it should be something else. And that's probably one thing that we are all concerned with as well, of how do we change the conditions in which we're speaking, so that we don't end up in somebody else's rhetoric, especially the ones we don't want to end up with.
I guess I want to talk about the weaponization of the word woke. In terms of how it's been used to silence and it's been weaponized against the very community from which it emerged. The etymology of woke comes from black mothers, such as myself, saying to their children, to Nelly's point, it's our bodies that are going to bear this violence because we can't hide. So people just assume our politics. So woke became a way for mothers would say to their children, be woke. Okay, you know, stay alert, be woke. And woke was really to point to structural racism. So it was to also remind children that they're going into a world with a racist structure, and that it was also to protect them from feeling the hurt of a personal attack. So you're taught, stay woke, think structurally. That person may be racist to you because they just think black people are lazy. They don't know about Black Wall Street. They just assume that after slavery, black Americans stayed at the bottom because they didn't have the impetus to make their own city of hope, and that it was burned, not just once. After it was burnt, they built it back up again, and it was burnt again. So for me, I think woke is an opening up of a doorway for conversation, where when you really understand it, you understand that when we say white people, we don't mean you. We mean we understand that you are performing in a structure that forces these behaviors on you. And so now when I listen to people say the word woke, it's become very evocative. It's like a spit. Oh, this wokeness. Oh, these wokies. Oh, don't give me that woke. And I wonder, how does something that's so profoundly beautiful get turned into this ugly thing so that now I myself, I don't use it anymore because it's been colonized and it's been made ugly. So I just want to also just bring out the violence that was put onto us by asking us to withdraw, the violence of language, the questioning of our politics, the policing of us, the shaming of us among certain communities. I've read some of the emails that have been sent to Nóra, and really, these are unacceptable. And these breed in us what we call in the Caribbean, we call it the lynching fear. You can't help it. When someone speaks violence to you, you literally begin to feel, oh my God, I'm going to Germany. I was feeling, I'm going to Germany. I need to speak my truth. But suppose there's a crazy person. I will get shot because I can't hide. And so thinking, as to Nelly's point, about the power of language and the violence of words thrown against us and towards us is something that I've been really disappointed with a lot of people who I now realize are just performing the left.
I'm just going to say something very brief, directly to the point of a decolonial lens, also because, I mean, we tried to unpack the decolonial in our panel before a little bit. We talked about the metaphorization of the term, about what metaphor actually also opens up, about the structural position of what the decolonial actually can mean. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase what I already said, but I talked a little bit, or situated the decolonial a little bit through its relation to decades and decades and decades of analysis of colonized people who put it in relation with fascism. And I think, you know, if you want to be quite honest, and I think what makes me angry as well, so I'm sorry, I'm going to be the the crying angry, you know. There's a performance of the left. There's also a lot of dishonesty about how and why people are invested in what. And we have all the right, you know, tools to make this performance so ubiquitous that nothing else needs to be done. To the question why I'm here is also because we really have to organize and mobilize. I don't have to say this, I'm repeating myself all the time, but you know, this is part of it. But also these decades and decades and decades of analysis of how all these things are always related really brings us here to see and to say a decolonial lens on, you know, this situation that we have right now is really a fundamental new understanding of, you know, how and why and what fascism is, how it came to be, and how it's coming to be at the moment again, you know? And I'm just paraphrasing this again because I think the decolonial lens is always particular, always situated. It's not just merely a metaphor if we understand it as, you know, being a metaphor just like something that, you know, takes away the embodiment of what it is and takes away the acting upon it or something. If we understand metaphor as beautifully as you put it in your prompt, then it is the best metaphor we can have to, you know, take action. So that's just what I wanted to add.
In one of those endless meetings when you're collectively trying to write a statement, knowing that, I don't know, I guess we write statements to recognize who we are and not, I don't know. I had to apologize for having a really short fuse. And I was told sometimes having a short fuse or being angry is a sign of having moral and ethical clarity. So I don't think we should, you know, and Nelly, don't apologize, please. I was always a little bit annoyed by the colonial as a term because it felt for me it's taking away the militancy of anti-colonial, which was the term that I kind of had as the term, and I didn't understand why we need another when we have that one. Though I think we also need more words always that are also relational so that we understand that underdevelopment happens, that there is those who are underdeveloped. It's not conditions, territories or people are born into. But if you ask the colonialists, I would say it's an anti-fascist, anti-ecocidal, anti-genocidal, anti-colonial, anti-imperial, anti-patriarchal. We have to call all those and then to understand how this lands in various places we use them so that we actually can recognize itself both in the shared metaphors or like we translate each other's metaphors that allow us to see a next and transform what we are doing, what we are seeing into a praxis. And it's not I'm the smart person saying this. That's like Ruth Wilson Gilmore saying, you know, abolition is not about just abolishing. It's about life in rehearsal. It's about everything needs to change, and it's red, and it's green, and it's international. And I think that's also open, like transmediale is international. It's connected to here, but it's also international. And I maybe didn't say anti-capitalist in my list.
I would say, like, I mean, what crisis have, I mean, we've been through many crises. It's not like this is the first time. I think that maybe this is, like, I genuinely feel that I understand a lot of the frustrations expressed, and I really, like, you know, I also hear them as well. I think it's important to vocalize these things as well. And I think that for me, there's quite a great sadness in some ways, because I feel that, like, really what people are really frustrated at is their lack of agency and their lack of power. And I think that this has really become to the forefront of kind of our existence here, like, not, I mean, like, here in Europe, here in other parts of the world, but here in different types of ways. And I really saw this, especially since COVID, actually. And just now, I mean, now what we're witnessing online, which is like the live streaming of a genocide, because, you know, yeah, why not, alongside like entertainment as propaganda, has been a real frustration at like the lack of power that we have to affect action. And this is a fundamental, like, this is the crisis. This is the actual crisis. The fact that we do not have material power, not in the way that we think we actually have. And instead, we're on Instagram, or we're on Twitter, or we're on TikTok, worrying more about how we look than actually thinking through where can we actually affect our material power. And for me, it's not just about, like, I just want to take the festival out of it. I, like, appreciate all of the support, of course, but I wonder, like, where are our other spaces? Where are they? Where, like, I don't have the answer to this, but it's a genuine question.
I mean, I really think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I felt so embarrassed after reading that like script, because I feel like it's like gonzo journalism where you pretend to be stupid, you know, but I wasn't pretending to be stupid. That was genuinely the conversation we had, my husband and I. But it's kind of, I guess, yeah, sort of gesturing to that like part confusion about people being, as you say, more maybe worried on the left about, like, Dubravka had this wonderful quotation, well, not a quotation, I'm quoting you, sorry, but you said this wonderful thing this morning, and I just, before you had to run, and you said, we want to simplify things into radical gestures because we want to be politically and theoretically pure, but fuck that. And I just felt that really kind of also exemplified maybe some of these themes of the horror of content as well. That we're sort of seeing, but yeah, if there aren't these sorts of, yeah, I mean, if we don't have agency, you know, in these sorts of radical or sort of pure gestures, then what kinds of like.
I want to say one last thing.
Go,
and then
please.
I'm going to shut up for the rest
No,
of the
I don't know
panel,
what to say.
I'm
I guess I'm asking what, like, if the left is fractured, what do we have left? And if we've no what are our strategies?
No, I mean, I think that, okay, so yes, I'll answer this question. I will try. I'm not, like, a smart person, but I try my best to at least pretend. But I think that, like, a large part of actually, like, what has happened, especially here in Germany, is that we were like made as like civilians and citizens to like pick sides in a way, and we basically like also, I don't know how it happened. Like that's the thing, you know, that's the biggest thing, that all of a sudden we were in this atmosphere. It was like it just enveloped you in some ways, and then we were like made to compete, like made to like think that anti-Semitism had to compete with like pro-Palestinian. Sorry, words. And this, for me, is like the biggest travesty, actually, that has really unfolded here. Like, one, of course, what I talked about the fact that, like, how little power that we kind of really, that we seem to really actually have. And secondly, the fact that we fail to recognize the unusable politics of neoliberal competition, and how these things play out online, and how these things play out amongst our neighbors, and how these things happen in our neighborhoods, over networks, through DMs, through emails. And I think that, like, I mean, the whole of the idea here was to create an awareness of, like, what these unusable politics are, which can take many forms, but fundamentally they are grounded in all of those things of imperialism, colonialism, patriarchy, sexism, homophobia, anti-Palestinism, oh, Jesus Christ. Sexism, but also, like, fascism, all of its mundane forms, racism of all kinds, and the fact that we weren't able to recognize that we were in a type of competition. And that makes me worry, actually. But I still have hope, actually, funnily enough. Like, I still have a lot of strength left, funnily enough, and I still don't give a shit, so.
And maybe to this, I'll just add one thing. So in the panel, I also spoke about the technologies of reproduction of empire, which I see in what this particular tactics of setting groups against one another, right? So it's so easy. And of course, I thought about some other historical context, but this is also this current context, right? So, and this was the competition, right? So who is hurt more? What means what? Etc. So what this particular technology, tactic of splitting the community, of not seeing the means and the ways to relate to each other. And that's precisely how these particular structures of power proliferate, right? So, as I say, it is very easy. And unfortunately, the commercial models of our communication means are just based on this, as we all know from lots of research, right? So they're based precisely on this easiness of juxtaposing and opposing and opposing, and that's why one side of this. So, of course, right.
I was going to say, I see this as the fracturing of the West's belief in democracy, which we've never, I've been in 2 coups, invaded by the US, blah, 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 blah. And that's happened in my lifetime. I've seen people gunned down in front of me. And so we never believed in democracy. We were like, democracy is for white people. We're not allowed to have it. And I think that part of the frustration and rage that we're seeing is the fact that, it doesn't matter how many thousands of people marched against the Iraq war. It still happened. It doesn't matter how many people marched in London pro-Palestine. It's still happening. So this feeling of lack of power, and to be honest with you, this distraction of war distracts us from the economic reality that we are all getting poorer, and all the people warmongering are getting richer. None of this would happen if wealth was evenly distributed, right? Because you wouldn't be able to sell arms, which only exists for one purpose, to kill people. I, for one, don't believe in this collateral damage, and I don't even really understand why it's okay to kill someone who's in the army, but not kill someone who's a citizen. I mean, all the people in the army, all of these, like, mostly stupid boys, they're someone's children, right? Why is it okay for them to march to death? Why is it okay for us to sacrifice these lives for somebody like Rishi Sunak? You know, it makes, that's what my son said to me. He said, you really think I'm going to go to war and risk my life for Rishi Sunak? So I think that, right? It makes the logics don't make any sense. And that's where I think we need to look outside the picture, and we need to look at why are they stirring up this anger in us, right? Why is this anger, and that this anger is being stirred up because it's a distraction against the economic system that's happening in the West, which is not democratic. Game companies aren't paying any taxes. What was it Nóra said to me? Amazon guy makes however many millions a day. That's not something to boast about. That is a failure of policy, right? And so I think the left also has to understand, like, how clever these people are at weaponizing, right? And this strike Germany, which I didn't understand. I didn't understand why foreign speakers were attacked. I didn't understand why I was being asked to, like, give up fees. Like, I didn't understand any of this except that it brought about the lynching fear in me, and I was afraid. So yeah, thinking, as Nóra said, about not focusing on what we think the issue is, but understanding the structure around which things are emerging. And once you can see the structure, and you have what's called cognitive empathy, which is what we need now, right? A cognitive empathy, not the sort of empathy that has made me unable to sleep since the war in Gaza began. Since October 7th, I haven't been able to sleep. We need a cognitive empathy to figure out what's going on. And I think it's an awakening for the Western liberal to understand you never had power. Democracy was a dream.
I want to maybe speak a little bit to this emotional labor that is, well, currently taking place in this panel, and also the labor of processing emotionally what is happening, which is in itself a kind of task very familiar to anyone whose country is committing genocide. So I would like to kind of share with you a list of things, and I would invite you to find a logic that connects them. There is a point to that, I will get there. So a list of things goes like that: a walk, a poem, a graffiti, a telegram comment, a downloaded book, 8 asterisks and a blank space, a remark heard at work, a tattoo seen at a concert, a private Viber message, wearing a blue and yellow scarf, replacing price tags in a supermarket, tying a green ribbon to a strap of a backpack, roller skating while wearing a Ukrainian flag as a cape, a request to a DJ for a Ukrainian song, holding blue and yellow balloons in public, to finish off earrings in the shape of a rainbow-colored frog, and a rainbow dash as My Little Pony character. So all of these things have been recently involved as legally framed as justification for detainment, administrative fines, sometimes including jail time. So I'm not listing this to incite sympathy, yeah? But I'm listing this to kind of point out to this particular reality show, yeah, in which the condition of self-silencing has expanded quite radically and has enveloped very radically all the spaces that existed and merged with them into a rather absurd shape. So one point of saying this is, don't take the freedom that you have to act for granted. Please make use of it while you have it. Russian joke. But the other side, this rather oppressive list also points to a multitude of ways in which people who don't have necessarily means to stage an open protest have still found ways to register their disappointment and anger and grief and process it in a multitude of collective ways. And of course, this comes with, as Nelly said, we should all do better. But in terms of this large-scale emotional work, I have a deep conviction that it has to happen, because if it's not happening, if this tiny work of registering with each other that you exist and you both are here and you are both disagreeing, if you're both saying no to war, it so means that you are not alone anymore. If left untreated, this silence can really, really fester, and it can lead to really disturbing conditions of political nihilism, which then have further reaching repercussions. So this is just an illustration that, speaking about tactics and ways of resistance, there is always something, even if it's tiny macro level, even if it's the tiniest wink, tiniest collective meow, tiniest thing that you can send to the other person or to throw at the other person, that still has to be explored.
What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. On the subject of tactics, corruption, and the supposed purity of theory, I think I'd like to enter into this as the corrupt agent and break it down for you guys. The biggest delulu is that any of your hands are clean of this. And I think the most useful framing is Hayek Valencia's Gore Capitalism, which I mentioned during our money chat yesterday. But it is still incredibly important for us to understand that the base condition of the world that we live in is violence. Your survival depends on violence against others, and that happens at a multitude of scales. The sooner that we can understand that and come to terms with the fact that there's no such thing as an incorruptible position, especially on the left and as a progressive, the sooner we can come up with a useful tactic. I think this idea of our continued fragmentation and dead ending of the left is a very Western point of view. There have been useful, successful, and messy revolutions the world over. There have been things close to revolutions. There have been things that have changed the structure of states. This idea that the individual has no agency at all is one that has been visited upon all of us who have lived in the colonized world, but one that we have also continually broken. And I think that, this foundational delusion is one that I think is the one that is creating a crisis here that seems to be one that has infected the institution and the academy at a certain degree. But I think that this thing of Gore capitalism, the realization that everything is built on a pile of blood and guts that were required for you to be alive, again, is the first thing that we need to accept before our politics can be useful in any way, before they can be material in any way, because the foundational material of the way that we're alive today is the blood and guts of many other people. And I just wanted to bring that into the conversation, because I think that often when we sit in auditoriums and have panel discussions, the specter of Gore recedes, when actually that is the thing that, even if you are a tenured professor, it is still touching your life. It's just that you have a clear sense of distance from it. Whereas for the rest of us, we might be seeing it open in front of us, the wound open in front of us every day. So I guess that's I think the wound is actually a path into developing a usable politics, not quite a stitching yet, but a confrontation of what that wound is and what requires it.
So I think we just have a few more minutes left of our panel, but I was kind of making a note here where I was like, democracy is a dream, left is fragmented, and then so what is sort of hope? But I actually feel like our last few comments have kind of brought us somewhere where actually, when we recognize our complicity, our sort of our lack of kind of ethical purity, as you say, the sort of when we sort of recognize that, but also like our lack of agency. What I've heard so much in Dublin recently is people being like, I can't believe like we're marching and we're marching and we're marching and nothing is changing. And it's, I think as Helen says, it's that kind of like moment probably of the West realizing, oh, you mean this isn't a democracy? What the fuck? But yeah, if we recognize these things, can they, instead of being incredibly exhausting, which obviously they are and they're emotionally exhausting, but can they also be the spaces for actually recognizing that then we need sort of new kinds of tactics? We talked about some of these this morning, obviously the kind of, and again, maybe they emerge from these sort of colonial spaces like James C. Scott's Weapons of the Weak, these kinds of like, the sort of feigned stupidity, the foot dragging, the muttering. I don't know. So we've time maybe for like one or two closing conversation points, if anyone has anything that they'd like to say.
Yesterday night was a conversation on basically the censorship that is going on at the moment with Margarita, who just left. Okay. Margarita, Tsumu, and Zoe Miller, and Sintujan Varataraja. Margarita started the conversation by saying, I've come to love liberal democracy because I'm learning all the tools that enable me to actually keep some of my agency and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to kind of reiterate or echo the whole conversation or what she said or something, but I think I kind of want to make the statement that, I agree. For a lot of people, for all of us, democracy is a dream. It is also something that we have to work for, and we also know that a lot of people work more for it than others, and we also know that there's degrees of it and particular instances of how it manifests, right? Like actually as a political system with like different organs that function or not or whatever, but you know what I mean. And I just want to say, I'm talking a lot about this with my partner, but maybe I'm saying it because I, in this panel, have to like identify as the German because I'm German and I was born here and I have a German passport and so on and so forth. But we Germans, like we are quite privileged with the kind of political system that we have and the kind of organs that we have and how they function. They do actually work a lot of the times for certain people. There's a lot of flaws. There's a lot of violence in the state, of course, with all its history and and I just cried about the state of things, so you know what I think about it, but I kind of want to make the case that there's, I just quoted you, but I do think, so maybe to sound off of what Alex just said, like, and in the before panel I made a case, to kind of realize or recognize language as that what it is, a technology that kind of enables us to do certain things. It's also, it can be very violent, as you have just said. But the concepts we use kind of, limit also a lot of the things that we can think, the imaginations we have, and so on and so forth. And I think it is really about how particular articulations come to the fore. So I think, for example, the ways in which we talk about the left and the right and so on, and I've used these terms today, but it's also quite, like, it's flawed. It's sometimes very lazy. what exactly the left is, apart from, you know, maybe a party that actually just split up in Germany, so now we have another one, but I think there needs to be some work in regards to that. And it's a very Western, you know, lens on like a particular landscape of parties and then a history of, you know, which groups are blah, blah, blah. But there's other things that really unite us, which is a common, you know, investment in certain struggles, which I have also said before. But I also think if there's something like a left, whatever it is, it kind of needs to like understand this particular system that we're in that does do things for us that we just maybe also don't use very well. And then from there start to kind of like, you know, sorry I was very long, but from there maybe start to change it, tweak it, whatever. But I do agree with what you have said, but I also want to state that, you know, I'm living a much better life in this country than many people in the world because of this country.
Yeah. I have one comment left. Imagine if instead of saying strike Germany, the call was conversation Germany.
Can I read the quote? No, but I love that. I mean, when
No,
striking,
they
it's
get too
also
much
good to
attention
know
already.
who are you striking against. But I want to read I'm not going to try to sing, sorry. Gil Scott Heron. And, sorry, peace is not the absence of war, it is the absence of the rules of war and the threats of war and the preparation for war. Peace is not the absence of war, it is the time when we will all bring ourselves closer to each other, closer to building a structure that is unique within ourselves, because we have finally come to peace within ourselves. And thank you, Alex, for mentioning wound, because we can't go over and flag. And we have to work for peace, which is Gil Scott Heron. Because it's not absence of war, it's absence of rules of war.
Thank you for moderating.
Thank you to all our panelists and thank you to Nóra for...
I just wanted to say thank you for everybody that came today. Thank you for everybody that showed up and had chats. And go have a drink in the bar.